Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo!
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. Get excited, guys. We have a really great guest. I have virtually in front of me Susan, who is partners with Jordan Syatt. So if you guys know Jordan Syatt, you probably know Susan. And if you don't know Susan, you're going to be really excited to know her. I'm really excited to have her here. Susan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Tony. It's great to see you.
Yeah, so good to see you. So great to have you. I hear wonderful things. So I'm excited for our listeners to get to hear from you. So first question I always ask, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners by sharing who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Perfect. So I'm Susan Niebergall. I own Susan Niebergall Fitness, an online training group company that I started myself a while back. And I'm also co-coach with Jordan Syatt in the Inner Circle, which is where my primary business is right now. It's pretty much what I do full time is work with Jordan in doing the Inner Circle, which is an online fitness community, group oriented. It's not one-on-one coaching, it's group coaching. So we do everything on a group global level and we do it together. And I'm just kind of an average person that got into fitness kind of like everybody else through, going to classes at the gym back in the day, when I would say back in the day, for me, it's back in the day because I'm 63. And so back in the day was like, I don't know, the 80s. I don't know, something like that. I don't know, 90, a long time ago. And, started with classes, got enthralled with that, started working with trainers at gyms, but struggled with my weight. Most of my life, even as a kid, was always heavy, was called chunky, whatever those words were back in the 60s, early 70s, that people referred to you. I was called that, but I was never obese. So I never had the huge amount of weight to lose, always just enough that I just needed to lose some weight all throughout my life. And, it was, I really never had any success with it until young adulthood. I went to Jenny Craig, which I just heard closed their doors recently for good. And for those who don't know what Jenny Craig is, yeah, right.
Good 100%. Bye. See you later.
Food company. You buy their food, you lose weight. And back in the day, the 80s, early 90s, whenever that was, when I did it. No, it was longer before that. I don't know. Anyway, it was a long time ago. They were like a competitor to Weight Watchers. They had come on the scene. It was a new thing. And so I lost 50 pounds with them, which on the surface is like, oh, wow, you lost 50 pounds. Well, okay. It sounds kind of cool at the beginning, but the problem with Jenny Craig and other companies like this is that you don't learn anything while you're on there. That you eat these little bitty trays of food. You're hungry. I was hungry almost all the time. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
I had no idea how much I was eating, had no idea how much protein. I didn't know anything other than they said, eat this food. I ate this food. So I couldn't sustain a weight loss. So you fast forward through decades of me losing 10, gaining 5 more, losing 5, gaining 10 more, just back and forth. Because the one thing I did learn from Jenny Craig was the only way I knew how to lose weight was to hardly eat anything. That was my lesson. And so that's why all these years when I was yo-yoing, that's what I did. I hardly ate anything. And of course, that still never works. And I would gain it back. And so that whole cycle began, got into the gym through all of that, trying to out exercise everything, and that really never worked. But I did start to love the gym as I got older and got certified as a trainer while I was still working in the school system. I was a school counselor for 33 years. And so I was doing some training part-time. I still had a weight issue. I still had pounds I wanted to lose, couldn't really do it. And I started getting older and older and older and thought it was menopause. My doctor said, no, your blood work, everything is fine. It's not your thyroid. It's not your metabolism. You're fine. So started having to look at what I was doing, for the first time ever, because I turned out to be that clean eater. I ate healthy. I did all of these things, but never paid a bit of attention to quantity. I essentially lived in a food prison, for the most part. And it was interesting because a great story about this real briefly. When I was working at the school, our office would have birthday celebrations for all of us. We would take turns bringing in cake, cupcake, something to celebrate somebody's birthday. We'd all gather, sing happy birthday, all the rest. And every time we had one of those, they'd pass around the plates of cake and I would always decline. I say, no, thank you. No, thank you. Pass it on. And they kept saying to me, Susan, you are so disciplined. How are you doing this? I would love to do this. I would love to be you. And all the while on the inside, I am screaming inside, I want to be like you.
Yeah.
I want to have that piece of cake.
Yeah.
But I'm too afraid to have that piece of cake. Because
Yeah.
I think that piece of cake's going to damage everything that I've been trying to do.
Right.
And the irony here was I was having no success anyway, but that piece of cake was frightening to me. Like it wasn't in my little food bubble.
Right.
So I couldn't have it. So, I went through all of this too. And it wasn't until I was in my mid 50s that I'd gotten into the gym so much and I really loved lifting heavy weight. I just started getting into that and I wanted to power lift, I thought. And everyone said, you got to hire Jordan Syatt. You have to hire Jordan Syatt. So I'm like, okay, I don't know who he was. So I looked, he's this young guy. Okay, I'll hire Jordan Syatt. I'd never done anything like that before. I was terrified. And we started working together. We just clicked, right? Because I am a super hard worker. I'm a great student. I did absolutely everything he told me to do and decided after a while, powerlifting wasn't what I wanted to do. I just wanted to build muscle and get strong. That's what I wanted to do. And I didn't even really go to him for nutrition because right before I hired him, I started making some small changes. After my doctor said, no, it's not your metabolism, all that kind of stuff. I just started making very small awareness, portion control kind of changes. I didn't track or anything. And I could start seeing things kind of change. So I'm thinking, okay, I got this figured out now, which I didn't, but I thought I did. So I didn't even really talk to Jordan about nutrition, but, eventually we did start talking about nutrition and I joined his inner circle as a member early on when he first started it.
Wow.
And I implemented a lot of the guidelines that we still put in the inner circle today. And all of a sudden things started to change between him, helping me see through a bunch of things, changing my training, changing my mindset over everything. My life completely changed in every way imaginable. I mean, I started losing the weight, have no idea how much I lost because I didn't own a scale, but I completely changed how I looked. Clothes sizes went down. Everything that you want to see, it finally started happening, but he had to really work with me at the beginning because I was coming to him with a lot of baggage, decades of false beliefs and things that are hard to get out of your brain,
Yeah.
So fast forward to now, he and I are coaching the inner circle together.
Amazing.
Which is kind of crazy because, I'm twice his age, but we bring different things to the table and we think we're like the best team because we're coming at things from different places,
Well, first, first of all, I hate to throw gender into this, but it is important, like to have a perspective from a woman versus a man. I think it's very different depending on the person that you're working with. I think that is great that you have that going for each other. And then yes, age, and especially because here's the thing that I did want to circle back to is because sometimes, guys, it might be a thyroid issue. Sometimes it might be PCOS. It might be, it might be an immune. There are situations where that is the case. However, at the end of the day, I would say most of the time, it really comes down to just like healthy habits, consistency, and mindfulness. And ironically, when you incorporate those things, right, more than just eating healthy, right, where you mentioned the kind of quote unquote clean eating, even forgetting about portions, however, just eating healthy, unfortunately, that's really not enough to it. Like and what your perception of what healthy is, sometimes it's like, if there's not enough fat or there's not enough protein or there's not enough, like it's not balanced enough. So therefore, is it your nutrition? But like most of the time, there's so much more that is part of like your quote unquote success. And I think so many people are so quick to blame their age.
Oh,
right?
so
And
often. Yeah.
yeah. Like, and that's where I feel like, I know that, listen, one success story is not the end all be all. However, I know that there's many people like you, Susan, who really finally decided to give up that diet mentality, incorporate things like strength training, start to just pay more attention to what they were eating, like focus on healthy habits. And now finally, after 40 plus years of struggling, they're finally seeing this changes that probably could have been, happening years ago.
Yeah. It's very common, I think, for people in my age group, just to think that, because of my age, my metabolism has slowed. And that's a big one, right? I thought that as well. And it's so interesting reading all the stuff that's coming out fairly recently that's saying, yeah, you know what? Hold on, that's really not what's happening. Like we maybe thought it was happening, which if you think about it is actually great news, that our metabolism actually remains really stable from when we're like really young, like 20 something up until my age, 60. I'm 63. So even after 60, yeah, it slows down a smidge, but it's not like this big thing that we thought it was, which is great news because that means guess who's really in control? We are,
100%.
And I think that we have to look at it that way. Like when the doctor told me that my blood work, everything was fine. In the moment, I was devastated.
Right.
Because I wanted the easy out. I wanted to be able to blame something external for my problem, why I couldn't be successful. It's easy to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's much harder to have to look at yourself and think, oh my gosh, I really thought I was doing everything right, legitimately, and I wasn't. That's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. And for me, it took some time to kind of accept that. But it should have been the happiest day. Like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm empowered, and I eventually was, but I understand how people think like that. It is easier to be a victim. It's like we're not victims, and even with someone with PCOS, you're not a victim either. It is workable. We have people in the inner circle who have lost weight with PCOS. It's every situation I understand is different. And some people have different challenges than others, but there is always hope. And, it comes back to what you had mentioned earlier, mindfulness, consistent behaviors, things like that. Honesty. I've been talking about that a lot. Not that I feel like people lie, because that sounds mean and underhanded. That's not what it means. We just don't think of some things, and we let emotion drive our car to the point where we believe anything emotion says. Emotion's getting us all worked up about something, and we will believe every last word of it, and so we've all got to learn over time to shut that emotion off. So now we can be really honest with ourselves. Yeah. And have I really done everything? Have I really been consistent at all with trying to do it? Am I giving up every week when it gets a little tough kind of thing,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think where people struggle is because if you come from a history of dieting and rules and rigidity and restriction, you're almost like used to being frustrated all the time because it's so difficult. Yeah. But I think that when you adapt to a healthy lifestyle, it's almost like things happen slower, but they're still happening. But it's like we allow ourselves to get kind of stuck and lost in the frustration. And then we almost like shoot ourselves. That's how we self-sabotage. Whereas it's actually working. Like what you're doing is actually working. But we're somehow getting in our own way because we're used to it happening faster. Because we don't think it's happening faster, we're now frustrated. And now we're frustrated. So now we're like this, we tell ourselves lies that this isn't working. And then we go and resort to old habits and old things that actually weren't serving us and weren't helping us in the first place
at all. Yeah. It's like, we have these unrealistic expectations of things, for decades, and we use the word should all the time. I should be. I should be losing more. I should be building more muscle. Or the word only. I only lost 2 pounds this month. What? We do this to ourselves. And I was telling somebody the other day, I feel like unrealistic expectations and all the shoulds and all the onlys, it's this burden that's sitting on your shoulders. And if you can free this off your shoulders and throw it away and really free yourself of those expectations or timelines, things like that we get caught up in, if you can really let go of that, your life changes. It's unbelievable. The freedom that you will feel liberated for the first time in your life. I guarantee it. That happened with me. I think that was one of the biggest things that Jordan helped me realize, is that there's no timeline for this. There's no end game here. The end game is when I'm off the earth, I'm dead and buried. That's the end game, Right. And so there's no like finish line for this for me. And once you can really adapt to that and accept that and embrace that, all of a sudden things start to happen, right? Because you're now way more patient with yourself. You're taking your time. You're not letting one screw up spin you out of control. You just hop back on track the next day, and you know that there's no way that this is not going to be successful as long as you just keep going.
Just keep going, right? Yeah. Exactly. There's no giving up is not an option. Like this is your life, right?
Yeah.
There's no, like you said, there's no end date. We're just going to keep going. So you may as well choose to do the best you can rather than like constantly giving up and then making it harder on yourself to get started again. I
think my age too, my perspective on life has changed a lot. I feel like as I get older, my life continuum gets shorter. Everyone does. And it really puts things in a different light. Like, why in the world would I put myself through that kind of hell? With the amount of time left I have on this earth, why would I even give that 5 minutes of my time? It's just, as you get older, your perspective does shift. And this has been something very different for me. I'm so focused now on living life, being happy, finding things that I like to do. I will probably never do a cut again. I can't imagine why I would. At this point. I don't want to put myself through that because my perspective is here. Now I want to just be able to live in maintenance like I have been, go to the gym, continue to build strength and muscle. That is my focus. I am driven, because I know the quality of life will be longer if I do that, So you shift. I'm not worried about the number on the scale anymore. I still weigh every day just because I'm fascinated to see how my dinner has affected my weigh-in in the morning. I can tell you what I eat. I can tell you if it's going to be up, down. It's a game almost now just to see what happens. Before, it would have devastated me to see the scale go up or the scale go down, because we grew up thinking if the scale goes up, that's bad. If it goes down, it's good. There was no fluctuation talk. It was just the thing. And now I still don't like it when it goes up. I mean, I'm a human being. I'm not void of feelings. I don't like it. Right. But I get that kick in the gut. But I also know, I had Chinese food last night or whatever, right. I know what I'm doing. I know that I didn't eat 7,000 calories the night before to gain a pound of fat. I know that now. And so, I get the kick in the gut. I look at the data and I go, okay, move on,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think there's a big misconception that with someone who has healed their relationship with food in their body, they never get triggered by the scale, or they never get triggered if someone comments on their body, or they don't get triggered if they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. Like, no, it happens often. It's just, we just get, like how you mentioned before, we know that facts are not feelings, right? And we know that just because I'm feeling a certain way doesn't mean that I now need to change everything about myself and kind of go back into the extremes, because we've been there before and we know that's not actually serving us. And we know that, day to day things change and there's explanations to it. And all we really need to do is just be consistent and stick to it, because they're going to fluctuate. It's going to change. But if we change every time it changes, well, then we're going to be all over the place and stuck on that roller coaster for the rest of our lives.
That is a tough one. The scale's always been a tough one for so many people, right? I mean, for all of us. I have nightmares of sitting outside the doctor's office waiting to go in, knowing the first thing they're going to do is put you on that scale with the big balance block thing. Yeah. And they move the big block and then they keep moving that little one. And
I'm convinced those ones always add 10 pounds.
It's awful. I remember standing on those things and they kept moving that little one and I kept screaming on the inside, stop.
Oh my
stop.
God. Yeah.
It was awful.
So bad.
But once you start fully understanding how the scale fluctuates, why it fluctuates, and how it fluctuates during the course of a day, then you can start looking at it more as just factual data,
Right.
Which it is. That doesn't mean you're void of feelings. That doesn't mean that you can't, not have feelings, any negative feelings toward. I still do. I have negative feelings every time I see this scale was up today. I've been in maintenance, and my maintenance range is like 4 or 5 pounds, something like that. And I'm at the upper part of my range. Okay. It's not a big deal. I don't like it, but I'm not going to change anything to try to get it to go lower. It's just, it is what it is. And I move on. And it's because I now know how to manage the emotion, right? And that's the biggest issue, right? We allow emotion to take over. It's kind of like, I use this analogy for people trying to lose weight when they're focused too much on training to lose weight and not enough on nutrition. It's like you have a car, the weight loss car, and it has a driver and a passenger, and the driver is nutrition for your weight loss car, because it's the driver's responsibility to get you from point A to point B. And that has to be nutrition. If you want to lose weight, it has to be nutrition. Training is the passenger. Riding shotgun has the map and is directing you and is helping you get there, but it's not their job to get you there. It's the driver's job, right? But then you have that backseat smartass passenger who's emotion, and they start trying to tell you, hey, turn left, turn left, turn left. You need to turn left. There's a shortcut over here. Turn left. And if you start allowing emotion to start driving that car, telling you what to do, you're turning left. Holy crap, you are lost. And there your wheels are going to spin. You're going to spend a lot of time getting back to the road and back on track yet again.
Oh my God, I love this analogy. How have I never heard this before? Oh my God.
It fits though, right?
That fits so well. That was...
And I also think there's another passenger that we need to allow to be more vocal, and that's logic. I mean, logic sits in the back seat too. Needs to have a bigger mouth. I think emotion is shutting logic up, and we need to do it the other way. We need to put emotion in the trunk of the car and lock it, and let emotion and let logic just sit in the back seat, because logic's going to keep you on track. You didn't eat 10,000 calories yesterday. So deep down inside, you did not gain a pound of fat, yet you're allowing emotion to tell you did. Right.
Exactly. I'm literally picturing like a family in a car, and I'm just like thinking of like all the different, like, I think like the person with the emotions is like obviously like a young child that's like like really just emotional and just obviously like hard to control. And then you have like the like maybe like older, more mature, maybe teenager or something like that's like,
that's
Mom,
perfect.
Dad, I don't really know if that sounds fair or right. Like,
it's the family.
Amazing. I love that. I love it so much. Oh my God, this is so good. So one thing that you were talking about before, I think it's really important, because I think this is where people get stuck so much, is kind of like when you were mentioning about, as you're getting older, you're realizing life is almost feels like it's getting shorter. And basically it's like, you're thinking, I don't want to have to do a cut. I just want to live my life. Like, all that. So I think I totally understand where you're coming from, and it's different from where I think how people interpret it sometimes, which is where I come from as well, which is like, just to me, I'm not stepping on a stage. That's not important to me. Like, I just want to live my life. And, I don't care to, cut weight for the drop weight and like look, leaner for my bikini. I don't care. Like that's me personally. But point is like, so I'm at the same position as you. Is I just want to live my life. And I want to live a quality life, and I want to live a healthy life, and I want to live a balanced life, and all that stuff. Where I think people get stuck, and I clearly don't want to go back to rigidity and restriction and all that. It's like where I think people get stuck, and I talk about this a lot, is it's like they know they don't want to go back there, right? But then they kind of get like their interpretation of I just want to live my life is kind of like YOLO. Like their brain goes to like, well, you only live once, like, so, and then it goes to the complete other end, and then they feel like absolute crap. And then they're wondering why it's like, how do people, then they think that's food freedom. And they're like, why do people like, what if I can't do that? I don't know what to do. And so like, now I just feel like crap, but now I'm even heavier than I was. Like, it's, you know what I mean? So I would love for you to kind of speak about when you were talking about like living a quality life, like what that actually looks like and what that means to you, and maybe to some of the listeners, like certain things they can start doing, and how that's very different from like that YOLO mentality.
So here's the thing, that whole scenario, for me, I'm like, I don't care to lose weight, right? That's not a goal of mine. Right. So that's why I can say I don't ever want to probably ever do a cut. Maybe I'll eat my words one day and do one. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But if there's people out there, if you have weight to lose, if you have even substantial weight to lose, there will be a time where you have to make some decisions, Right. And this is where the tough love piece kind of comes in, because I feel like there has to be some of that, especially for the YOLOs, Mm-hmm. You can't YOLO your life, yet be angry that you're, I'm making the number up, 50 pounds overweight or whatever, mm-hmm. and that your health is starting to be effective or whatever. You don't have any energy, but you want to YOLO. You can't have it all right. the time, right? You have to decide, okay, so maybe if I focus on some small things that I could implement to get me to get into this weight loss thing, start conservatively, whatever, just a couple things that maybe I'm going to find that I can still do some things. I can still participate in events and not feel deprived, because that's what I always hear. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to go out anymore. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to have fun at a party anymore. They're not going to be able to do these things. And I think they have kind of that old time view, the old fashioned view of what losing weight actually is, like starving, eating lettuce and having no fun. Right. I think that's what everyone thinks. Yet that's one extreme. Yet it's not YOLO either. Mm-hmm. You have to find a middle ground that works for you. Mm-hmm. And there are a bunch of ways to do that. I think you have to be willing, first and foremost, to be honest with yourself and honest with wanting to hold yourself accountable to some degree. Because if you're not willing to do that, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of, I think, and I talk about this in my book, like people get confused, like sacrificing versus compromising. Like you don't have to sacrifice everything, but like if you want to see some changes, you are going to have to make some compromises. Yeah, you can't expect changes if you're not changing anything. And like, if one extreme didn't work, the other extreme is not going to work. So I think it really, like you mentioned before, which I think is important to bring it back to, it's really having that honest conversation with yourself. Yeah. Like, we know extreme restriction doesn't work, but we also know just eating whatever you want, whenever you want, all of the time. And if you have a specific goal and you want to feel a certain way, or you want your health to be improved, that's really not going to be an effective strategy either. So how can what is my middle? And something else I say a lot is kind of like how the term moderation, it's often like everything in moderation. I get the term, it's a great term, but however, if you don't define what moderation means to you, that can get thrown around a lot as well. Yeah. And I think it's really important for you to understand, like for some people, moderation might be they have something sweet every single day, because maybe if they don't, then that's when they end up binging on it every day, or once a week or all weekend or whatever it is. So their version of moderation is like maybe a little bit of chocolate or a little bit of ice cream or whatever it is every day. And that's their version of moderation. But maybe for somebody else, it's like their version is once a week or once a month or whatever it is, because maybe their sweets aren't even their thing. But when it comes to like fried foods, they have to be a little bit more mindful. And so they're there, or alcohol or whatever it is, like
whatever it is.
I think it's important that you have that honest conversation with yourself, and also giving yourself some grace and understanding of like finding your middle. Like you're not going to have it figured out in one weekend. No. The weekends are the hardest because the weekends come every 5 days. They're not an everyday thing, right? And then you forget, and then it's different from the weekend before. And now you have a barbecue, and last week it was a birthday, and this week it's a wedding, and so yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like if going from the YOLO mentality to, okay, I've got to now narrow everything down and count this and weigh this food and blah, blah, blah. That's a lot. That's a big gap, right? Yep. That's a huge gap. And that's why most people just throw up their hands and say, screw it, I can't do it. Because they try to change everything all at once, coming from kind of that YOLO mentality. So, maybe focusing on one or two things that you want to get better at. And one exercise I like to have people start with is to get out a pad of paper and a pencil or a pen, not a computer to type on or a tablet or your phone, but actual paper and pencil. Y'all remember those, and keep it in the kitchen. And every time you eat anything, whether it's a snack, a little bite of something, write it on this little piece of paper. Bite of whatever. I had a handful of almonds. I had 2 lattes. I had blah, 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 whatever. You're not weighing anything. You're not measuring. All you're doing is taking that pen and you're writing it down. And you're creating this list of what you consume every day, which is great to see. And what you're probably going to notice is your eyes are going to get really big when you see how much you're actually consuming during the course of a day. Because in all honesty, we completely underestimate the amount of food that we eat. And oftentimes that is because we never feel completely satisfied. So we don't think we're eating very much. We're eating high calorie kind of foods that don't fill you up. And so
they're
thinking,
not as
I'm not eating that much.
Yeah.
But you'll start to see it all. And then you could even, if you wanted to, start Google how many calories in some of these things that you're eating. So you start seeing just some numbers if you want to start that way, but just write everything down. And then you can, after you do that for a while, you can start making some changes based on that list. Maybe you're not going to reach in the bag of Oreos or whatever. Maybe you're not going to reach in the bag of chips this time, just little awareness behavior changes. That's where you can start. Because honestly, if you're in denial about how much you're actually consuming, that's the toughest part about this. You have to be willing to be open to it and understand that you're probably eating foods that aren't filling you up. That's why you don't feel satisfied or full. That's why you think you're eating a whole lot less than you are. That's why you think 2,000 calories sounds like a ton when you're probably eating a whole lot more than that now, kind of thing, But if you start with that, it's a real education and it's something doable for everyone. And if you want to pair that with deciding that I'm going to walk every day, start with that. That walk could be 5 minutes. I don't care. Doesn't matter. And then it can get longer. You can listen to us on this podcast and go out for even longer. I mean, it's you pair those two things together and that's a great place for someone to start. And it's not overwhelming.
Yeah. And guys, and for some people, you honestly might stop there and that actually might be enough for you because if you try to do more than that, that's when things kind of go out the window. Like that's what we're talking about kind of finding your middle of what that looks like for you. For others, that's going to be longer or more, or maybe, they're adding runs in or whatever it is. But the point is like, you got to start somewhere. But I think if you're avoiding looking at the facts and being honest with yourself, well, then you're not, it's unfortunately like it's going to be years from now or whenever the time that you decide to get to work and do the work, that it's going to take even longer. To do that. I think of it like finances, like it's hard to look at, but you never look at how much debt you're actually in. You're never going to get out of it. And
what's interesting with that, and I love that analogy because that's so true. With finances in particular, when you refuse to look at them, kind of what I don't see doesn't exist kind of mentality, the anxiety builds up. It just starts eating alive. It eats you alive, right?
Yeah.
And that anxiety, the same thing, because you're ignoring stuff that you shouldn't be ignoring, with trying to lose weight or whatever. You're putting it off. What I don't see, I don't have to know, whatever. And the anxiety ends up bubbling over. And it's not easy to confront stuff and hold yourself accountable. But when you do it, it will feel great, to be honest. It's going to feel great.
Once you actually realize like, oh, well, I can do this, especially if you have a strategy, which maybe we can end with that, like maybe a couple of tips on things that we kind of mentioned a little bit more, but like things that you're going to take action on, like that's not dieting, but it's also not saying like, I'm not caring, right? It's kind of like what that middle ground is. And, once you have like a little bit of a plan and some awareness and the accountability and the decision that I'm saying goodbye to that part of me and I'm saying hello to a new part of me, that's where things really start to shift and change. And then you do start to feel like really relieved. Like, it's kind of like, and I do a lot of like dating analogies, but it's kind of like if you're in a toxic relationship and you are like afraid to break it off, but when you finally do, you're like, can breathe again. And you're like, oh, wow. Like,
why did I wait so long?
Why did I wait so long?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
the thing that will help almost anything that's causing you stress is to take action. That is probably the best way to relieve any kind of stress. If you're anxious about a situation, take action towards it. I mean, whatever that action is, it doesn't have to be like this life-changing thing, but even regarding the weight loss scenario, you're taking action, you're writing stuff down. You're starting to understand what you're consuming. You're taking a walk every day. You're taking action. Every little bit does in fact count and does in fact add up. And especially with the walking, you start walking and you're going to start walking longer and longer, especially if the weather's nice or whatever. Yeah. And you're going to start to feel better. And when you start to feel better, you're going to be, and I hate using the motivated word, but you're going to be more motivated to maybe look at your food a little differently too, because you're feeling better now. It's going to encourage you to maybe be more observant. So, I mean, it's a win-win, and it can start with getting outside and just getting some air and walking around for 5 minutes,
Because we love mental health walks. It's not even for the physicality of it. It's for the mentality of it. And then you feel good. And then when you feel good, you want to do things that make you feel even better. And it's a beautiful cycle.
That's a cycle we want to be in.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Awesome. Okay. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to add or share for our listeners? Something that you think that might be really helpful for them to hear, particularly maybe the people that are in their late 50s, early 60s, because I know we have some of those listening who are approaching that. Or maybe, even for the people who aren't there yet. What do you have to say for these people?
The biggest message I can give you is it's never too late. If you want to make a change, it's never too late. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter what your situation is. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you have an issue, a health issue, it doesn't matter. You can change whatever you want to change. And if you're younger, it would be great for you to start being aware of everything right now. And by that, I mean, keep up being active, because the problem is as we get older, we get less active unless we're on top of this.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did want to say that before, because people are like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm definitely don't have the metabolism that I had 20 years ago. And it's like, you kind of do, you kind of don't, but that's probably not related to your age. It's probably either related to the history of dieting and damaging your metabolism from doing very chronically dieting, or more likely, like the fact that you used to play basketball and then you would go to the gym and then you would walk all over campus and like you would ride your bike to school or blah, blah, blah. And now you sit at a computer all day. Yeah.
We don't, and those changes we don't even think about because they happen over decades. It's not like last month, it's much longer than that. And that's why it doesn't even register with us, because so many people say, no, wait a minute, I'm active. I did a lot this month. No, we're talking about the last 35, 40 years. So that's why if you're younger, keep up the activity, be aware of your nutrition. You guys are armed with so much better information than my generation was at your age. And so then by the time you're my age, you're going to be so far ahead of where I am. It's going to be crazy. For people in my neighborhood, in the age bracket, you can still change. I didn't change everything. I didn't get my act together till I was 54 years old, and I don't, everyone says, oh, you have good genetics. Well, you know what? No one knows what my genetics are. So no one can really say that. And y'all don't know about the health genetics. I have on my dad's side, have obesity running in my family. I literally have to be aware of that every day of my life. I think it's just in the back of my head. But so, it is something that we can sit back and blame whatever we want to be and be a victim to whatever we want. Or you can tell yourself, you know what, this isn't going to be easy, but I'm still going to do it anyway, And if you have that kind of mentality, the victor mentality, not the victim mentality, you will change whatever you want to change. It's never going to go as fast as you want. It's probably never going to go as smooth as you want, but it's going to happen if you keep going, And so I leave you with that. Don't ever give up. Keep going. It is not too late.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, this is so great. Susan, where can people find you and connect with you if they want to follow up with any questions?
You will find me on Instagram. You can DM me over there on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, Susan Niebergall Fitness, full of resources, especially for middle-aged people. Got a lot of resources there. I have a podcast called the Strong and Lean at Any Age podcast. And I have a book, which is basically my fitness memoir of all the mistakes, the millions of mistakes I made and how I turned it around. And just to let you know that it's never too late. And that's called Fit at Any Age. It's never too late. And you can find that on Amazon.
I love that. And that might just be the title of this podcast. I tend to title
that would be perfect. That would be perfect.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, Susan. For those of you listening, make sure you give her a follow. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. It will notify you when a new episode comes out. Thank you so much for listening. As always, this is Tony Marinucci, a registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.